everybody. This is the part 2 of the criminal justice series where we are comparing and we're juxtaposing the American criminal justice system with European criminal justice system. And it is my pleasure to have attorney Vera Zambrano back with us today. And for those of you who missed the part 1, right, and you can look it up, but for part 1, if you missed it, attorney Vera Zambrano is a practicing attorney here in the U.S. and also in Germany, and she's based out of Miami, Florida. She's also a member of the German American Lawyers Association, and she is a member of the International Bar Association. Vera, welcome back to the show. Thank you for doing a part 2 with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and yes, very happy to continue with one of our topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, last time we talked, I mean, we ended the podcast and we were just talking about this. And then you and I continued to talk, and we talked for about 45 minutes about all this amazing content, amazing information that you possess, that you have, stuff that you're privy to, experiences that you had that I think would have been valuable for our audience. And that's why we're doing now a series. And I love it because it really is fascinating, right? You hear about, the American criminal justice system. Some people, have this belief, right, that it's the best in the world. And then studies have been done, and they've shown that, in the ranking, that's not necessarily the case. And it might be the best in some ways, it maybe not in other ways. So it's a pleasure, and it's really I'm honored to have you here on this podcast to talk to us a little bit about the specifics, right, the nuances that you understand that maybe our audience doesn't understand.
Exactly, and you have a great knowledge too. You know a lot about these topics we were talking about today, about the civil rights comparison between the US and Europe. It's very, very dynamic, right? We have a lot of changes. We saw a lot of changes during COVID, especially. And yes, very happy to talk about this topic today.
Awesome, cool. So let's jump right into it. So I wanted to start off with the Bill of Rights, right? So here in the US, we have what's known as the Bill of Rights. I wanted to ask you if there's something comparable in Europe, and maybe more specifically in Germany. And I think maybe, and you can tell me how you want to approach this. Maybe we start off with Germany, and then you can tell me, because obviously Europe, you're talking to about a dozen countries or so. So maybe we start off with Germany, right? Which is, you're an attorney there, and then you can tell me maybe about a few other countries that you're familiar with, whether or not they have a Bill of Rights, and the same thing with some of the other questions. But specifically with the Bill of Rights, is there such a thing in Germany? And can you expand on that just a bit?
Yes, I would like to start with, Bill of Rights in the US, like in general, right? It's a lot of people don't know it's the oldest and also the largest surviving constitutional republic, right? So there's a lot of countries that copied the Bill of Rights, actually. And the most important differences between the US Constitution and the European Constitution, right? Europe has 27 member countries. One of it is Germany, but the EU, the Europe Constitution, has also a concept of rights, but it's very different. So when we have the Bill of Rights in the US, these are rights of the individual against the state, so against the government. In Europe, it's the other way around. These are legal rights of individual that are provided by the state, by the government, to protect the individuals. So it's a different effect. It's the opposite effect, if you will.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by the opposite effect?
Yes, so it's a catalog, especially in Germany. We have, the fundamental rights, so the basic law, which is called the Constitution, right? We have 19 articles that are including all the rights, freedoms of individuals provided by the state. So it's not something that you have to enforce against the state, right? It's something that is provided by the state to protect the individual citizen. Yes, so it's a different concept, right? Because the history of the US and Europe is very different too. So that is just one consequence of the different developments in both territories.
That's interesting. And you said there's 19 of those in
Yes,
Germany?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how many of those are you able to, kind of just share with us? I mean, just off the top of your head, I'm wondering what those are, because we have 10 and it seems pretty comprehensive, but I'd love to.
Yes, so we have 19. So most important is like also like in the US, the priority is, the rights that come first have the highest priority, right? So our first one is human dignity. That means human dignity shall be inviolable. That means every person, every individual, every human being has human dignity before the law. And it's a so-called eternity clause. So no government, right? No future president could ever change that. So the human dignity is the number one article. Then we have personal freedom rights, the right to free development, right to life, the right to physical integrity. Then we have the right, the equal right before the law, right? That all humans have to be seen equal before the law.
Right.
Then we have the freedom of faith and religion, right? Very important also, like Article 4. Then we have the freedom of speech, expression, art, and science. Then one also very important right is the freedom of assembly and the freedom of association. We have the right to privacy. The freedom of movement is super important in the European Union, because if you are a citizen in one of the European countries, like for example, in Italy or in Spain, you are free to move to any other member states without having to have a visa or any kind of permit. So you can pretty much move freely, work and live in any of the member states, which is a big deal, right? Then we have also the freedom of movement, freedom of, the right to protect your property. But one big difference is that we do not have the right to bear arms, right? That's not in our constitution.
Wow.
So that's one of the biggest differences, I would say, because it's a big, it's one of the most important rights in the US, right?
Yeah. And I'd like to be able to kind of talk about a few of these, but maybe we could talk about that one since we just covered that one. What's the reasoning behind that, or what are some of the cultural differences that have led to that not being a guaranteed right in Germany? Or can you speak to that a little bit, maybe culturally or maybe politically? What's the reasoning for that?
So the reason for that is that Germany or European systems believe in the protection is solely a task of law enforcement and the security institutions, right? Law enforcement, especially police, is the exclusive institution to protect, exactly, and not the individual citizen. We have exceptions if you are allowed to have a concealed a license to carry a gun, right? But only, this is just a few people do that actually, right? When you're like ex-military, for example, and you want to continue to do so, right? You want to continue to have this in your life and to be able to exercise this right, or ex-police officers, but if you have no connection to that, you like a normal citizen would never, approach that and do the test. You have to do like tests and like in training, you have to stay continuously in training. You have to prove to the government that you know how to handle it. So it's something also that if you go to Europe or to Germany and you talk about the right to bear arms, people will not understand what you're talking about, right? Because it's the European mind doesn't include that, right? We believe in, the government is also a big difference, that the government is taking more care of people, right? So in a lot of countries, it's more towards a social and a welfare state, and the government takes care of people. It's not so much like in the US about self-responsibility and freedom, right? It's a big difference, because in the US, people love their freedom, right? They want as little government as possible, to in any area of their life. So that's a big difference. And I believe also when you talk about weapons in general in Europe, because of the history we had there, right? It's the Second World War, for example. There's still a big anti behavioral mindset towards that, right? We don't believe in everyone should arm themselves, and we leave it up to the law enforcement.
Right. Now, here's a question. I mean, and I'm sure that right there leads to a lot of other questions, right, for some of our listeners. But one that I'm curious about is, you know, if you go to like here in the US, right, like in states like Texas, right, and I know a lot of people have family there, and people really talk about how Texas is known for being, relatively speaking, and it depends, right, which areas of Texas, but relatively speaking, it's considered a very safe state because you know, a large percentage of the population is armed. In fact, where I'm at here in Utah, you could probably say that, you know, 90+% of the households are probably armed. And some of
Same
them
in
are,
Florida. Exactly the same in Florida. Yeah, everyone, like at least one person of the household has a license to carry or
right,
has weapons at home. At least if it's not the dad, it's the mom, right? So you have yeah, that's just you know, that's just the general rule. And I just read today that that the state with most movement, like where most Americans and also internationals, when they move to the United States, is not California. It's South Carolina, Florida, and Texas. Texas is like top number one. So like after Texas, there's a long, you know, there's long time no other state. So that's also something in Texas. Of course, I would say, you know, maybe eight out of 10 households have have guns. Yes.
yeah. So one of the things that I've heard, right, and there's no study that I've read on this, but you know that these states usually that have, you know, this type of culture, this type of mindset, like that, these are states that are safer. So I'm curious, in Germany, given that, you know, that that's not part of the culture, that probably, I don't even know what percentage you would say of what percentage of Germans, German households have, you know, a weapon. And then I would love to hear how your analysis between like that and like safety, like how safe do you feel in Germany, given that most people don't have weapons and they rely completely on law enforcement?
Yes. So you could see a decrease of security within the last decades, right? There's like a proven decrease, but it does not lead to, you know, any changes in Germany or in Europe, right? So there's it's hardly unlikely that you will ever have something in a constitution like this, or, you know, especially in the constitution where you give an individual the right to bear arms. I'm pretty sure that will never happen, especially not in Germany. With, you know, with the history in mind, and everyone, like in the history classes in school already, teachers are teaching young kids that that can never happen again, right? Under no circumstances is this, you know, going to happen again. And also, I believe one big part is you cannot really say which country is safer, right? In the US, it might be more dangerous when, you know, almost everyone can and will carry guns, right? But to prevent people from carrying and gaining guns, right? It's not the right way. You just have to look at, is this person training, right? Does this person train regularly? Is this person, you know, a responsible adult, right? So it's not that easy to say the more guns, the more dangerous it is, right?
Right. In fact, what you just pointed out, you said that in the last 10 years that it's getting less safe in Germany, but that's just the last 10 years, right? And Germany has had, you know, has not had a right to bear arm as a constitutional right, as a, you know, as part of their Bill of Rights. That's been the case for what, since World War II, maybe? Or
Yes.
so then that means that the increase in crime, right, that you're seeing over the last decade is really not a direct, there's no direct correlation between that and,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yes. So a lot of Europeans, they, you know, the point fingers when I'm talking to Europeans or Germans, right? They point the fingers and say, "Oh my God, you know, it's so." You know, they only hear what they hear in Europe is the news about there was a school shooter, right? Or there was an attack, or there was someone that was mentally ill, was, you know, attacking people in public. That's the news that you hear mainly overseas. You know, you don't really see the statistics about that. Most households have guns, and it's not the more guns that the more dangerous, you know, the system is, right? So, but also in the US, you can see that no matter who is in charge, right? No matter who is in charge of the country, you will not be able to remove the constitutional right? Because we see now, like the Democratic Party, they did not really, I mean, they limited a little bit, right, percentage of full automatic weapons, right? But they did not say we have to get rid of the constitutional right, or we have to somehow try to limit people from getting guns, right? So it doesn't really matter if it's a a Republican or a Democratic president in charge, because the country is that's the history of the country. You cannot take away the right to bear to have weapons from an American citizen.
Right, right. That's interesting. And I'm sure we could probably keep going on this, but on just this one, this one right that's not guaranteed in Germany, but is guaranteed here in the US. But I'm also curious about the very first one you mentioned, and I'd love to know if you can expand on that. You said that it's the right to human dignity. Is that what it was?
Yes. The right of human dignity. That means that a person, an individual, can never be an object of the government. So it cannot lose its dignity.
Okay.
As soon as a child is born, it is equipped with human dignity. No matter what this person is doing in his life, crimes, no crime, it does not matter. The dignity can never be taken away. So that's one eternal clause. So no matter if you have a serial killer, right? This person is still has still the right to exercise his human dignity, like fair trial and all these things, right?
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask. What does human dignity mean? So let's say we're talking about hypothetically, right? Somebody's been charged with murder, and I assume in Germany it's also innocent until proven guilty, right?
Yes.
And in the US it's supposed to be that, but we talked about that. That's not really real, but that's a whole topic for another conversation. But let's get back to the human dignity. So if that's the case, right? If somebody's been charged with first-degree murder, you said just right now, you said that means that they're entitled to a trial. What else does it mean to have human dignity?
So human dignity means that we have a lot of examples. When we're like in law school, we have this, all the time. We have to practice this all the time. That means, first of all, that the government cannot treat an individual like an object. So that means torture is forbidden under any circumstances, right? Even if you try to get out, something that only the perpetrator knows, or only the suspect, right? Until in the trial, the suspect could know, right? Where's the victim? Where's the weapon? Like all these things. You can never torture or even threaten someone to be tortured. That's already against the human dignity, right? It's that easy. Like when people say you have to weigh in what do you want to get out of it, right? And under certain circumstances, the torture should be allowed. Then it's like it's the common knowledge that under the law, right? That's how we learn it, at least in law, that you can never threaten someone to torture, right?
Yeah. Yeah.